Okay, so I assume you've heard of computer games, or more specifically, computer role-playing games. Perhaps you've played Fallout, or Planescape, or Disco Elysium, or Shadowrun Returns, or Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines. Well, all of these games were based on an older medium, tabletop role-playing games. Instead of a computer being your window into the secondary world, it's another person, just like you. Typically, they are called the Game Master, and they describe the world to you, play all the NPCs, and react to decisions your character makes. Actions with unclear outcomes would get resolved via die rolls with numerical bonuses determined by elaborate probability systems, with bookkeeping being done both by the GM and players with pen and paper. Wait, players? In plural? That's right, TTRPGs is something you usually play with friends. Each player makes their own character who is a deuteragonist of the story you all tell together. Then, everyone gathers once a week for a couple of hours to play out their characters in the world that the GM runs for them in an ongoing conversation, like an episode of a TV show.
How do you want to do it? As you mocked the spider to death.
Something about my words are just making his blood boil.
So as you screech out this phrase in Infernal, you watch as its legs begin to skitter upward, and as it tries to escape up the top of the ceiling, it loses its grip upon the top of the sewer ceiling. It falls, slamming onto the ground next to Bo, and its legs begin to curl, and as it's like shaking, you see blood pouring from wounds that weren't there before. It seems the Infernal itself has affected him physically from the inside. As it begins to curl its legs in deeper and deeper, the sound of its guttural shrieking getting softer and softer.
I turn around and go, "Don't worry, guys, I got it. Good old broomstick trick. Works every time."
Put him in a mocking bag, Molly.
I never had to do that before.
I regained 7 hit points.
And this can keep going for months and years. Usually, long-form games like this are called campaigns. Now, it might not sound too enticing. Why would I want to stick to some losers instead of a computer who would provide a much more convincing simulation of a living, breathing world? Well, there's the entire rest of the video to answer that question. I do want to preface, though, that I'm going to compare TTRPGs to video games a lot, and some of you might take the comparisons as an attempt to put down the latter, but I have no such intentions. I love video games. I am a proud video gamer myself. But they are a medium of finished works, usually designed to be engaged by a single person at a time, whereas tabletop RPGs are something akin to an improv performance that all players participate in regularly. And that makes them two different kinds of media that are good at different kinds of things. And this video is specifically about the things that tabletop role-playing games are good at. Now, with that out of the way, let us begin. One problem that's been plaguing video games pretty much since their conception is that the choices that players are presented with are always limited by options that developers put in the game. But in TTRPGs, there is a person behind the world you're running around in, and they can just invent a response to your solution on the fly. This means that linearly designed games are practically impossible. Instead of works like Half-Life or Metal Gear Solid, the baseline is somewhere along immersive sims, like Deus Ex. The GM sets the objective, but the players can reach it however they want. You don't even need to choose from dialogue trees to express your character, and just this little thing alone already makes a world of difference. One more point where video games and traditional role-playing games differ is that failure in the former usually forces you to go back in time until you get things right, but the latter never really stops. When you screw up, the game still keeps going. Even in deadlier campaigns, you usually make a new character after you lose your old one. This permanency gives weight to your decisions that is not possible when a save and load function is in the equation. You have to live with the consequences of your actions, and you don't have to wonder whether things could have gone differently, because they could. Additionally, players can set their own goals. They can have ambitions. Players can choose to take their characters' stories in directions never foreseen by the DM, but the latter can adapt and facilitate the goals the PCs are trying to reach and make it seem like it was part of the design all along. But that's not the only thing that helps players make the stories of their characters their own. The weird thing about the TTRPG industry is that the products it sells aren't finished works that you can experience at your own pace. Instead, they're tools made to help you create your own stories. If I say to a friend, "Hey, I think you should check out D&D, it's really good," they won't be able to appreciate it by just picking up a player's handbook. What they'll have instead is the very same elaborate probability system I mentioned that will help them make their own campaign together with other players. Systems give gamers a set of common assumptions from which they can properly communicate, and these common assumptions can be used to guide their campaigns down different genres, styles of play, and subject matter. Fate is a general narrative-based system that can be customized to cater to different genres. Dungeons and Dragons is a game about, City of Mist is a fantasy noir game in an urban setting about ordinary citizens with legends reincarnated inside of them, where you have to play out your character's dramatic conflict between their mundane and mythic self. And these are just the examples I got off the top of my head. I haven't even touched on Powered by the Apocalypse, or Savage Worlds, or Call of Cthulhu, or Vampire the Masquerade, or Shadowrun, or Fatal. Simply put, you can tell just about any kind of story with the right players and system. And this means that there's much less restrictions on your creativity when it comes to character creation. Sure, you probably won't be able to play a fairy in a hardball detective noir game, unless you're playing City of Mist. God, I love City of Mist. But once you do create a character that fits into the setting, the GM will be able to incorporate parts of your backstory into the game. As such, players themselves can shape the world with the GM. It's like an exercise in collaborative storytelling, in which you are all simultaneously the performer and the audience. And TTRPGs are the only kind of medium where you can get that level of creative expression, short of just straight up writing a story, which itself leads to a much greater degree of CRPGs usually approach character creation with a more practical attitude, letting you choose different abilities and features that make you good at solving a particular kind of problem, or perhaps solving problems in a specific way. But your character's mind, their inner psyche, that's usually left up to you to make up for yourself. As a result, that kind of stuff often only really manifests in the choices your character makes, their interactions with the outside world. Even immersive sims tend to revolve around problem solving first. Quite often, you have to fill in blanks with your own imagination. My character didn't just stand still for 13 hours, they spent that time talking to locals, having a drink, fixing up their equipment. But in pen and paper RPGs, there are no blanks to fill, because the entire game is taking place in your and your players' heads. You're literally pretending to be someone else, or in other words, role-playing. This allows you to explore the psychology of your character in a way video games rarely allow, because the entire paradigm is not necessarily task-based anymore. Games like City of Mist take advantage of this. You're not rewarded for solving cases or uncovering mysteries, ones that aren't relevant to your character at least. You're rewarded for forcing your character to make hard choices about their identity and making them face their flaws. And hey, video games have three-dimensional characters with meaningful arcs too, but tabletop RPGs give you the tools to create your own. However, there is one thing every table needs to make things work smoothly. Up until now, I've been describing a sort of platonic ideal of TTRPGs, what you can accomplish with them in a perfect scenario. But the truth is, in order for the magic to happen, you need to put in a lot more effort than you would with movies or games or any other piece of media. There is a certain social contract you enter when you agree to play a campaign, and that carries all the implications of everyday social interactions. The whole medium is based on conversing, and proper communication is vital to ensure everyone's getting what they want out of the game. You agree with your players beforehand on the kind of campaign you want to play, and it's important to make sure what subject matter is and is not acceptable at the table. Compromises have to be made. People often meet up for a whole session before starting the game just to discuss stuff like this. Such gatherings are colloquially named Session Zero. Quite often, players going in with expectations that their game won't meet results in disaster. Just look at the amount of posts on the RPG Horror Stories subreddit. Not to mention the difficulties of maintaining a consistent schedule. Many year-long campaigns fall apart before they reach their end because of burnout or plain old life getting in the way. Tabletop RPGs are a demanding hobby. Yet, all the agreements and compromises still leave a lot of common ground for you and your friends to build from, and with all the different ways to play a campaign, like modular play, or West Marches, or sticking to one-off sessions and month-long campaigns, you can always figure out something that's going to work for your group. There are also a lot of useful safety tools to ensure games won't accidentally step into territory that's uncomfortable for any participant. And when the cards fall just right, when everything aligns in place, tabletop role-playing games allow for a kind of fun that no other medium can truly offer. And that's why I love TTRPGs. Thanks for watching.